Thank you, members who came and participated on this panel today. We are going to take some questions from the members of the committee. I want to thank you. Certainly, we're talking about a very serious subject, and there's nothing that's more important in the state than our kids and their education. On a lighter note, I do want to ask Mr. Spainhour, my wife is assistant principal at the school he's at, and who won the coin toss, her or David, for being in charge while you're gone?
Funny that you asked, because our other assistant principal is in a training today, and your wife is doing the work keys testing. So we have a teacher that is an intern that's currently in a graduate program for administration who's filling in need. And I have about 27 text messages on my phone right now.
Well, I'm sure that I probably need to check my phone, and I probably have the text messages too, because I live her day as she lives it too. So, and I'll pay for saying that when I get home this evening. But members of the committee, if you have any questions, and if you will, direct your question to one specific person on the panel. We're not going to go down through the line and have every single one of them answer. And I'll get you Representative Pittman, but we have Senator Newton who'd ask first. So Senator Newton, then Representative Pittman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank this panel for being here today. I'm sorry Dr. Croom had an appointment. I'm personally very familiar with Dr. Croom as he superintendent in my district and represents a very fine school system there in Johnson County. We've had the opportunity to discuss some of these issues. And I want to thank you, first of all, for adding specificity to what I think a lot of the members here on this committee have been hearing, specifically about Common Core from parents and from teachers and principals. I'm a parent with children in public schools, high school, middle school, elementary school. We're very engaged, lots of educators in the family. And of course, we've also heard some things about general level of frustration in public education today. I think that's very illuminating to us. It continues to be illuminating. We have a lot of work to do. And I'd like to just briefly make a comment before I ask my very simple question, okay? And Mr. Chairman, if I'm allowed, I'd like to ask it to the panel because it's going to be simple and it can raise a hand.
Well, we'll ask the panel, and we'll let one lucky winner get the answer.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to point out is this. You know, I'm holding this iPad. Some of my colleagues have heard me tell this story. I had two boys in middle school in Wilson County, and it was decided that technology was needed. And you know, I try not to be too critical of anyone, but it went lickety-split that all of a sudden everybody had to have an iPad. And in the middle of the year, teachers are being pulled out of the classroom and substitutes inserted so that the teachers can be trained on the iPad that the students already have. And I've had this discussion back home, and I think it's very illustrative of what I see as a problem with Common Core. If I listen to all of your comments collectively and what I distill from it, there's obviously good things I'm hearing from all of you about the focus on critical thinking, and that's one of the cores that is good about Common Core, is it strives to achieve that, and that's desperately lacking, in my opinion, in our overall standards. As teachers have been able to implement that on their own, but consistently across the board, I don't see that as a parent. And so, you know, I think that's a good thing. But the way it appears to me is, and this is not to point fingers, is that Common Core is much like a rollout of the iPad plan in my son's middle school. And you got kids playing on the iPad, playing games, not even listening to teachers. Teachers having to take them up and put them in the cabinet because they don't know what to do with them. And to me, it sounds like that's a lot of what I'm seeing and hearing about Common Core. So my question to you as a group, and if one wants to answer, that's fine, but I kind of wanted to see a show of hands. At a minimum, does everybody think that at a minimum we just need to call a timeout on what we're doing on Common Core and get our act together, find what's right about it, what works for North Carolina, and then move forward? Or do we just need to keep going like we're going now as far as the rollout? I mean, problems with training, et cetera. And that's my simple question. Don't we just need to take a time out?
No, we have several folks who may have different answers, but if someone want to respond, like I said, just for sake of time, we're only going to allow one person to respond. Thank you.
I'm not really sure what you mean as far as a timeout. We've got to keep going, and I think what I'm hearing from teachers is just give us something and leave it. Quit changing everything every few years, because we get comfortable with something and we feel like we're on the right track and things change. So I think if we just stay the path, but fix the other problems that are adding to it. I don't think necessarily that it's the Common Core, it's other aspects being tied to the Common Core that are creating a lot of the problems.
Representative Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask my question, I'd like to make a request, if possible, somehow the statements from each one on the panel be made available to us, because I'm not that great at taking notes, and there was some great stuff here. I'm afraid I missed some of it. I want to make sure I get it all if that's possible.
Representative Pittman, I don't know if this is recorded. Okay. Our staff says that 2 of the speakers who spoke, their statements and the presentations are in your packet, and they'll have a discussion with this panel and try to get that to you. It's not recorded, so there is not a recording, and no one takes notes on what they say. Okay. My assistant says that we can take care of that, so I don't know all the details of what goes on in the administrative process. I just stand up here, so.
Being a committee chair myself, I know we don't really run the committee.
That's right.
Question I'd like to ask for just any of you to reply to is, I'm continually being told, that's a little too strong. I have often been told that one of the problems a lot of parents have is, since there's no textbook coming home, the child wants help at home, and the parent has no idea how to help them because they don't have a textbook, and the method of teaching is so foreign to what they had when they were growing up that they actually end up in deep frustration. I mean, I have a constituent who does appraisals in real estate and is really good at math. His wife majored in math, and the 2 of them could not help their child answer, or work a problem out the child was having trouble with. And this is not from me. I'm hearing this from parents, that they feel that this is by design to cut them out of the process. And I wonder how some of you might respond to that.
I think, I'm sorry, Tim.
I appreciate it.
I don't think that there's a design to cut parents out of the process. As a matter of fact, I think most teachers in school districts work very hard to include parents in the process. Systematic success is incredibly important. We have to have everybody buying in. I think your better question is about textbooks. My wife is a language arts teacher, and one of the last things that she and I talked about is she also has to teach social studies now. We're requiring so many teachers to be certified. I think the greater question about textbooks is, when we constantly change a curriculum, how do we create a textbook that allows us to do that? We start looking again at additional revenue. How do we choose the textbook? Which company has priority in your county? I don't think textbooks are the answer as much as it is parent engagement inside the classroom rather than waiting until it gets home.
Can I just respond quickly, just a quick comment, just clarification?
Just a quick follow-up.
They're not implying that the teachers are wanting to cut the parents out. The implication is that the source of Common Core has that intention, not the teachers.
Yes, and whoever wants to respond, was that a comment, Representative Pittman? I'm sorry, or was you asking the question?
I was just clarifying that I wasn't talking about teachers, I was talking about Common Core.
Representative Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question, and I don't know who would like to answer it, so let them choose if you don't mind, sir. I'm trying to determine, or I have determined a sense. I want to make sure what I've determined is correct. My sense is that the Common Core state standard itself is not really the problem per se. And that your view is the process is the problem, the implementation process, and that your caution to us is no more policy whiplash. You need, just like a business, you need to be able to depend on what's next, and where you're going, so that you can plan, execute, evaluate. So it seems to me that we have confused the Common Core state standards themselves with the process of implementing the Common Core state standards themselves. It's not the objective that's the problem, it's the process of implementing the objective. And that your fundamental issue with it is broken into two parts. One is how fast we're moving, and two is the extent of the assessment process. Just too darn many tests. If we, quote, stay the course as you indicated, okay, we know where we're going. The standards may be a work in progress to some extent for us, but we really need to get a North Carolina approach to how we're doing this, and we don't have that. Now, that's the sense I get out of it. Am I on track, off track?
Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to respond, yes.
That was definitely the point that I was making in my presentation, that Common Core state standards are, at their core, pun intended, good standards, but the implementation was way too fast. And we did not have a chance to sit back and really adjust to it when all of the other changes that are coming are also coming very, very quickly. And they may have something to do with the Common Core, or may not. But many, many changes were implemented, especially in the last 2 years, with teachers that have left them reeling. And unfortunately, that gets passed on to the students. We're seeing higher teacher turnover, and not because of state standards. Almost every one of us here has said that polling our teachers, the actual standards are good. They, we can tweak them. They are open for flexibility. We are able to actually make them important and relevant to the students that we teach in our schools. But the change process has left us all reeling. Even small changes make people reel. Like, I know in 2 weeks we have to change the clock back to daylight savings time, and how many of you have already started to think, oh great, I'm going to lose an hour. I mean, it does make a change in what we're doing. So changes this big really are the problem that I think we're all talking about here.
I have not seen any other hands or members. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
May I further address that?
You sure can.
What I teach, I said before, I teach in a program called Project Lead the Way, and it's STEM initiatives. And what we do is we use STEM skills to make sure that students can solve the problems that they identify. And I think one of the things that we really need to look at with Common Core is how do we make it relevant to North Carolina? I think a lot of us said one size doesn't fit all, and I think we've also said that common standards are good, but I think education has to be actionable. And unless we focus Common Core on how can it improve North Carolina and how can it improve our individual communities, because certainly myself in Western North Carolina has different needs than those others that are on the coast. I think we need to have flexibility within the state and within our local LEAs to make sure that what we are doing in education is making our communities better. Like I said, my greatest, the value of my worth is when my students come back and they make the place that they come from better, because they've learned to identify the problems in their communities and they go and seek education in order to fix those. And I think until we take Common Core and we focus it on what we need in North Carolina for all North Carolinians, I think you're going to have a little bit of resentment from teachers and the community.
again, seeing, did you want to comment?
I'd like to just briefly.
Yeah, sure, yes, ma'am.
I think to say what you're saying is accurate. The Common Core standards are good goals. Dr. Seuss mentioned in his pyramid that the standards are the goals. I think for me, it feels like, and others may argue that this is not accurate, but it feels like to me that the assessment is based on our goals versus the assessment being based on the curriculum to mastery. And that's kind of complicated. You have to understand the difference in a standard and a curriculum. And I think if you take away that high stakes accountability, not altogether, we do not mind being held accountable. And I get upset when people say, well, teachers don't want to be held accountable. You can hold me accountable all day long, but give me the opportunity to teach, to let my students be passionate about the learning, to understand the curriculum, and don't test me to an arbitrary standard or a standard that's a goal. It's very difficult when you say, should we put the brakes on it or should we modify it? There are two things I'd love to see the brakes put on, and I have to say this for my teachers and my students. There are teachers and students this year who will experience extreme stress and loss over what this high-stakes testing will do to them. I promise not to say the words read to achieve, I'm only going to say it once. The students who are in the 3rd grade this year are being held to a standard. Those students did not take on the Common Core and began being taught the Common Core standards until they were 1st graders. So I find it very unfair that in preschool and kindergarten, they were not at this level. And all of a sudden, they came out of kindergarten and the parents told, you're reading on grade level, you're doing a great job. They hit 1st grade, new standards, your child is way below grade level, you've got a lot of work to do. So it's complex, but I think the standards, if they're seen as goals that guide us, I'm completely in favor of that. If we are testing and driving testing to meet a standard that's not attainable for most, I have a problem with that.
All right, now, seeing no more questions, I just want to take a moment again to thank the panel for coming and being with us today and for leaving your daily jobs and duties, giving us some of your time to discuss this very important topic. Again, our next meeting will be March 20th. Most, if not all, of that meeting will be public comment. And again, the sign up for that will be online. The directions for what to do in about a week. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.